Agriculture produces the house you live in, the chair you sit on, the clothes you wear, and the food that you eat, and also the job where you work. Welcome today to the Farm Bureau Farmtastic Agventures Bee Google Hangout. My name is Michelle Specht, Organization Director for Ohio Farm Bureau, and I'm your host for today's Hangout. 2 weeks ago, our Bee Google Hangout was going to be joining you from San Diego, California, where our Google Hangout program was honored by the American Farm Bureau as one of the top 24 programs in the country. Our committee was able to share our program with others interested in Ag in the Classroom programs from all over the country. However, snowy weather in Ohio canceled that hangout, so we are here with you today. This morning, we would also, or actually this afternoon, we would also like to welcome our tech coordinator, Jen Barnett, Office Administrator for Jefferson County Farm Bureau, Mr. Mr. Moffitt's production class from Indian Creek High School in Wintersville, Anita Cook, who is the organization director for Cuyahoga County Farm Bureau, and our guest expert today is Mr. John Grafton, former apiary specialist for the Ohio Department of Agriculture, and he's a current beekeeper from Jefferson County. Now, let's welcome all of our classrooms and teachers on our Hangout today. When I recognize your classroom, please give us a wave so that we know that you are here. Joining us from Winchester Trail Elementary and Franklin County, Ms. Adams' class. All right, great job. Ms. Mayer's homeschool class from Hamilton County. Hi, guys. Okay, and we have North Elementary classroom in Jefferson County. Great. Looks like you are all on. Welcome to all of you. Hopefully your classroom had an opportunity to watch the bee video and read through the Bee Ag Mag. Mr. Grafton will spend a little time now sharing with you his experiences as a beekeeper, and the classrooms will have an opportunity to ask questions. Now let's get started. Let's go, Mr. Grafton.
To be here with you. What I'd like to do today is just tell you a little bit about bees, some things that I know. Maybe I'll make up a few things along the way, who knows. But we're just going to talk a little bit about bees, then we'll open up and let you guys have some questions. One of the biggest things about honeybees, everybody's afraid of them. And I don't know why. I mean, here we are this big and honeybees that big, so why are we afraid of those bees? It seems to have something to do with stinging. And everyone's afraid that as soon as you go out and you touch a bee or you see a bee, it's going to sting you. And that's not always true. Bees will defend themselves, but they're not really out to sting you. In fact, if we look at this poster, we've got this beekeeper, and he's just out there looking at his hive of bees, and he doesn't have any special gloves on, anything like that. He does have some special equipment that I'm going to go over with you, but he's not being stung. A lot of people would say, wow, he's got to be getting stung, but he's not. He's just out doing his thing with his bees and enjoying them. But as I said, he does have some special equipment, and we do have some of that here today. This would be a veil, kind of a hat and veil combination. Let me get it situated here. That we would put on. The veil would keep the bees away from our face. A lot of people can take bee stings on the hands or the legs or something like that, but you don't want to get stung in the eyes or behind your glass or something like that. So, you know, we do wear veils to keep the bees away from our face. Another piece of equipment we use is this. Really helps cut down on bee stings. That's called a smoker. We put some sort of material in this. It might be wood, it might be grass, it might be pine needles, whatever. We put them down in there and light it. So when we close it and then squeeze this bellows, we get a lot of smoke coming out. What we do is we puff smoke into the front of the beehive. When we puff that smoke into the front of the beehive, it's just like with people. When we smell smoke inside of our house, we think we're going to have to leave. The bees, though, they can't call 911 and have the fire trucks come rolling up and all this type of thing. What they do is when they smell a lot of smoke, they start eating. And a honeybee has to be able to bend its body to be able to sting you. And just like people, when we eat a lot, we don't bend very easy. So when the bees have smell smoke, eat a lot of honey, they don't bend quite as easy or as quickly. So therefore, it slows down the stings. It doesn't always cut them all out, but it does slow them down quite a bit. Something else that we sometimes wear, some people wear, are gloves. As you can tell, these gloves come up quite a ways on your arm there, and that protects not only your hands, but also your arm. But as I showed you in that poster there a while ago, a lot of beekeepers don't wear those kind of things. Gloves are kind of cumbersome. You end up dropping things, and that just kind of upsets the bees even more. Another specialized tool we use is this thing. It looks like a paint scraper. We call them a hive tool. They come down a little finer edge than what a paint scraper does. We can use that to go in between the sections of the boxes to open them up, so that we open them up easier than just going in and knocking them apart. And that does a lot to keep the bees calm. But we're going to talk a little bit about what's inside these beehives. A lot of times, you know, we think honeybees. Exactly what is a honeybee and what types of bees are there inside there? The different types of honeybees. And there are different types. This particular one is a queen. You can see she's got a longer abdomen. That'd be this section of the body here. She's really not a whole lot longer than the rest of the bees. I mean, the diameter-wise, she's about the same, and her head or thorax, she's about the same. But her abdomen is longer, so she can back down into these holes. These holes are called cells, the six-sided cells, but she can back down into those and lay eggs down in there. If she was to lay an egg down in there, that's that little white needle-like thing sticking up there. If she was to lay a fertilized egg in that, it would take approximately 21 days from the time that egg would hatch and go all the way through the different stages, from the larva to the pupa until you have an adult bee coming out over on this side. That bee that would be coming out would be the worker honeybee. The worker honeybee is a female, incomplete female. You know, the reason I say she's incomplete is she can't lay eggs and reproduce and that type of thing. The queen is actually the only one that can do that. Let me set the queen back down here for just a second. There's only one queen inside of a hive. She's a mom. She can lay 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day in the summertime, where she's really actually laying a lot of eggs and that type of thing. Through the winter months, she slows down, but in the summertime, she can lay that. The worker bees are the ones you're going to see out on the flowers and the trees and whatnot, collecting nectar and pollen and that. In fact, this is pollen on this particular bee's legs. We're now visiting this flower, getting the pollen dust off the anthers of the flower onto its legs, and it takes that back to the beehive. This would be another shot of a worker bee, just standing by the front of the hive, fanning its wings. They do a lot of that type of thing, just keep the hive cool, take the moisture out of the honey and that type of thing. The worker bees inside of a beehive, you may have 40 to 50,000 worker bees in there. These are the ones that will sting you. They're the ones that give you that opportunity to get that little shot of venom now and then, okay? So those are the worker bees. This is a shot of a queen cell. If for some reason they want a new queen, they can take one of those fertilized eggs that would usually develop into a worker bee in 21 days. They can build a special cell around it, feed it a lot of royal jelly. That's this white jelly-like stuff up in there. And 16 days later, they would end up with a new queen. Now, if the queen was to lay an unfertilized egg, you would end up with this. And that would be a drone bee. The drone, you can see, is a huskier, kind of a husky type or bigger bee. The drone is a male bee in the hive. The male sole purpose is to mate with the queen. If he doesn't mate with the queen, and when the cold weather sets in, or when there's nothing coming into the hive, the worker bees actually kick him out. If he does mate with a queen on a mating flight, then he dies in the process. So we've got those different types of bees inside the beehive. What I'm going to do now is actually open up that beehive and show you what's inside of it, what the beekeeper puts inside of that. Let me drop these off and open up this hive for you. Take off the outer cover. Like I said, the bees will glue all this together. They put propolis in, and it's like a super bee glue, but they just pull it all apart or stick it together that way, and then we come in and take it apart. This upper section, this upper box, let me just show that way. This upper box we call the super. That's where the surplus honey goes. We put inside of that these wooden frames. Inside the wooden frames, we put sheets of foundation. This happens to be plastic foundation. It's got an imprint on it of hexagon cells. Remember those little holes that I showed you where the queen lays the eggs? That's what that impression is, just a hexagon cell, six-sided. What happens then, we go from this to the bees will pull that out, they draw it out. But how they do that is on the lower side of the bee's body, lower side of the abdomen, they've got wax glands up in between the abdomen sections, and they secrete little wax flakes, kind of like snowflakes of wax. You might think of it that way. They take those little flakes and they use the teeth or the mandibles to shape it. So they add on to each one of those little cells, end up with a hole. Then they'll fill it with nectar. Nectar is a juice out of flowers. They go out to the flowers, bring that nectar back in, and that nectar might be 40 to 50, maybe even 60% moisture. They bring it back in, put it inside those little holes, those cells. Then by fanning their wings, they basically dehydrate it. As they dehydrate that down to about 16 or 17% moisture, they will end up capping it over, putting a thin layer of wax over top of that. What happens then is you know, once they get this whole box filled with this, then the beekeeper will come along, somebody like myself, or maybe one of you guys, become a beekeeper. You come along and take that honey, then by using a electric knife, we use a knife something like this, it's got a thermostatic control on it, we can actually take that thin layer of wax off. As we take that thin layer of wax off, both sides of the frame, we can take that over into this machine we call an extractor. Put that frame down in there. When we spin that frame around, if we would actually have it uncapped, the honey would fly out of those cells, up against the side of the tank, down the tank, and out the bottom. So you'd have honey running out the bottom hole down there in the buckets, and we'd strain it out and put it into bottles. And we'll get back to talking about honey in just a minute. But first I want to go on down into the next section of this box. This lower section is actually called the hive body or brood chamber. We put in sheets of foundation. This sheet of foundation is pure beeswax. We've taken those cappings and we cut off the comb up above. We've sent them in. They milled them out, put them in sheets like this, and they also have that little indentation on. Sometimes you can even get those in plastic, though, and in this particular case, of black also. They have that indentation on them. The black base makes it a little bit easier for the beekeeper to see the eggs and different things in the bottom of those cells when he's trying to look his bees and trying to see what's going on inside of them. But the bees will actually add on to both sides of that, the same as they did up above. You end up with a frame that looks similar to this. You've got all the cells. Let me see if I can tip this back just a little bit. But if you look down in these cells real close, you might be able to see some different colored items down in there. And you say, well, what's that different colored stuff? And that's actually pollen. Pollen the bees have collected from the flowers. I think I showed you a picture of that on the one bee's legs. And as they bring that pollen in, they put it down in these cells also. Why do bees go out and collect pollen? Why do they collect that nectar? Do they do it for us, the beekeeper? No. The bees actually collect nectar and pollen for themselves. The pollen that you can see in these cells is actually used as a protein source in their diet. The sugar that they need in their diet comes from the honey. Honey is in good shape. Honey's actually two simple sugars, so the bees can digest it real easy. People can digest it real easy, but that's why they produce it is for their own diet. Bees, like any other living organism, whether you're talking about people or dogs, cats, chickens, whatever, they need a balanced diet. So we're in good shape that way. They need that pollen for the protein and the honey for the carbohydrates. Go back together. We're going to walk on over this other way and look at some honey also. If you look at these two different types of honey that I have here, you can see two different colorations of it. A lighter and a darker one, depending on how it'd be like on your left, my right type thing. The lighter honey is usually a mild flavored honey. The darker honey would be a little stronger. You can go from almost white to almost black honey. And it depends on what the bees make it from, what type of flowers they make it from. In Ohio, we usually don't have a lot of big fields, a lot of big, say, orange groves. So we can't get orange blossom honey in Ohio. We can sometimes get clover honey because there's a lot of clover grown in Ohio. Things like that. But most of the time, the people in Ohio produce what they call a wildflower mix. And that just means that whatever the bees are collecting it from, they might get a little bit from alfalfa, a little bit from clover, a little bit from this type of tree or that type of tree. Whatever happens to be blooming. Then they bring it back in the hive, mix it together, and when the beekeeper runs it out, he ends up with just a mixture. So it has a complete, depending on what it's made from, is going to give you different coloration and this type of thing. That wax that we cut off, those thin cappings, we can melt down, put it in a cake. Types come into moisturizing gloss. And a lot of those have beeswax. A number of uses. It's used a lot in candles.
I think that the beekeeper has locked up. I'm going to walk down and check.
Michelle, I'm wondering if the classrooms have had the opportunity to review the Bee Ag Mags that we sent them.
We have not, because we did not realize that we were going to be doing this. So over here at North, we did not.
Well, the Bee Ag Mag will give you a lot of information. That's the title, all about bees, and if you were a bee. And the best part about it is it has some great information about if you wanted to be a beekeeper or some other type of experience or career with bees. So it's a great opportunity to take a look at that. And then the best part about the Bee Ag Mag is that something that you can take home and share with your parents as well.
That would be a great idea. I don't think sometimes people understand how important bees are to agriculture, Anita. Do you?
I think you're right, Michelle. I think that there is a very strong connection between bees and agriculture. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, you know, there are a lot of different products that we would not have if it were not for the important bee, that's for sure. Does anyone have any ideas maybe of products that would not exist without the existence of bees? I think you guys are on mute. Okay, maybe we can ask that question. But if okay, here we go. We've got one guy who is going to tell us.
You have to talk loud. Okay, so one of them would be honey.
Yes, we definitely would not have honey without bees. That's for sure. But when we talk about
Michelle, bees go from flower to flower. What other type of flowers besides pretty flowers that we see in our yards that we grow can you think of that maybe would produce food? Mrs. Adams' class has their hands up.
Okay, Justice. She asked what flower would produce food.
okay, what is one of the most favorite fruits that someone has that you would make cider out of?
Apples.
Apples. Apples are a perfect example of how the pollination of the bees are important. If it was not for the bees pollinating the apple blossoms in the spring, you would not have apples. That is huge. There are many types of vegetables, many types of nuts. There are also cantaloupe, cranberries, pumpkins, and sunflowers. And just think about that. You know, the bees go from, like Anita said, from flower to flower and help with that whole pollination experience. And that is why we are able to produce those different fruits, vegetables, nuts, and things like that that we would not have without the importance of bees. That's for sure. So some other things on your Bee Ag Mag kids. On the back, there are a lot of really neat activities that you can get into. There are some really neat websites that you can go to on beekeeping, and I think we've got our beekeeper back. Hey, Mr. Grafton.
Hey, how you doing, Michelle?
I think if you want to start where you were talking about, I think you were getting to the point of the beeswax.
We talked a little bit about beeswax. That is about what I stopped. Beeswax is used for a number of things, from making candles to making little ornaments, or back into using it as a base in your lipsticks and that type of thing. So beekeepers keep bees for a number of reasons. Everything from honey production, which a lot of people think that's the main reason. There's also pollination. I heard you answering some questions there with the kids about different types of things that are pollinated. Whether you're talking the melons and the cucumbers and that type of thing, or almonds and all that sort, so it fits together well that way. So honey and then pollination. And then the beeswax is actually a crop, so some different things that come out of the beehive besides just honey. Bees can be a lot of fun for beekeepers, regardless of what you're doing on that. Myself, I started bees when I was probably about the age of some of these kids we're talking to today. I was about 10 years old, and I got into it as a 4-H project. And from that 4-H project, it led into a job and that type of thing. And beekeepers can go into a number of job lines. You know, if you're thinking someplace down the road, what can this develop into? You just go with beekeeping, and you can do entomology, which is a study of insects. That can take you maybe into some of the chemical companies where they study how different chemicals affect what's happening in life, you know, as far as chemicals being used for control of this or that. So there's a number of different things that way. Some different websites you can go on. Michelle, I noticed you mentioned some of those, or were just beginning to mention some of those. One that we use a lot here in Ohio is the Ohio State Beekeepers website, which is ohiostatebeekeepers.org. They've got a number of different things on there as far as training videos. Local clubs. They've got a list of local clubs on that website. So whether you're in Washington County or Columbiana County or Jefferson, wherever you happen to be at, you're able to go to that website and find a local club where you can find some local beekeepers that will help you get into it if you're thinking about doing that, or answer a lot of questions, or maybe even come out to your school and bring some bees out and talk to you, something like that. But there's also some information on that website about 4-H grant scholarships for getting into beekeeping, so if you want to do that type of thing. So there's a number of things out there that's going on with beekeeping, a lot of fun things to do. I'm open to questions, Michelle. Let's see if these guys have some real questions for us today.
I think that would be great. Thank you, Mr. Grafton. And now it is time for questions. We want to make sure that the classrooms, the students speak loudly so Mr. Grafton can hear each of your questions. And we will take questions in the order of Adams, Mayor, and Mrs. Best's class. Okay? So do we have a question for Mrs. Adams' class?
Stefan's going to ask a question. Stefan, go ahead and ask.
They're not.
See yourself there?
Have you ever got stung by a bee?
I've ever got stung by bees? Lots of times. That's part of the fun of keeping bees. When you get stung, you know, it affects people in different ways. We don't like to be stung because no matter what they say, it does hurt. You know, you do feel every one of them. It's like getting a needle stuck in you every time you get stung. But yeah, I've been stung thousands and thousands of times, but that's part of the fun of it.
Well, fun for you, but maybe not for anybody else. Okay, let's go to the next class. Miss Mayer, do you have a question?
What's the difference between raw honey and regular honey?
raw honey and regular honey, basically there's no difference between the two, okay? The terminology between raw honey and the regular honey would be just the amount of processing that's done, okay? Most of your local beekeepers, okay, the guy that's got a few hives of bees out in his backyard would have what we think of as raw honey because he's not done a lot of processing to it. What you're buying in some big grocery store or something like that has got more processing done. So maybe it's got more filtration to it or something like that. So that's probably the biggest difference between what people call raw honey and regular honey. But truthfully, if you really wanted raw honey and you went to the extreme of raw honey, you'd have to eat honey straight out of the beehive while it still is in the comb, never been processed at all. So, you know, that's comb honey. So that's a whole different story in itself. So, but that's different.
So that's just like that's like Winnie the Pooh.
That's like Winnie the Pooh.
Okay, next question will come from North Elementary.
We had several questions about, or variations of, how much honey is produced in a year, whether it's, from the beehive or, how much honey would a farm produce, a typical bee farm?
Okay, that's going to vary from year to year, to be honest with you, and the type of weather conditions. Because the honey is made from nectar out of flowers, the amount of rain you get as opposed to, dry spells and stuff helps how much moisture comes out of the ground up through the plant and therefore into the nectaries of the flower. So that's going to vary from year to year and, plant to plant, that type of thing, location. Most of the time, we figure, I'm in Jefferson County, Ohio. I think you said you're from North Elementary there. So I put you in Jefferson County. So we usually figure in this part of the state, the bees have to have 60 to 70 pounds of honey for them to live on through the winter months when there's nothing blooming. Then if we get fortunate enough to get somewhere between 40 and 50 pounds off of a hive ourselves, then that's for us. Okay, so you got the 60 to 70 the bees need, and then the 40 or so pounds that we get to keep, 50 pounds that we get to keep. So that's going to be a seasonal production per hive. How much is made at a bee farm depends on how many hives they've got. So it would kind of work out that way. If you wanted to think of each hive making, say, 120 pounds, but then you have to split it to two ways. So, okay, you can't take it all. They're making it for themselves to live on. They're not making it for us.
Okay, when you talk seasonal, Mr. Grafton, does that mean that would be 120 pounds a year, or 4 times a year in each season, or how does that work?
That's a year. That's a year. Most beekeepers will take the honey once, maybe twice a year type thing. So when I'm saying a honey season, that's spring to fall.
So if you would get, say, 50 pounds of honey from each hive in a year, would you be happy with that?
Some years I'd be extremely happy with that. If it's been a dry year or something, I'd be extremely happy. But yeah, if we're getting 50, 60 pounds in Jefferson County, Ohio, yes. Other counties, that'd be low for them, but in Jefferson County, Ohio, that'd be good.
Wonderful. Okay, let's go back to Winchester Trail and see if they have another question. Is Adam's class?
Emily. Just stay there. Emily.
Just stand right there. They can see you, honey.
We can see you.
I've heard there's been a bee shortage.
Okay.
Questioning about the numbers of bees. What's happened to the numbers of bees over the years?
Yeah.
Okay,
Great question.
That's a good question. The number of bees over the years in Ohio has been decreasing. It took a big fall back in about 2007. 2008, it took a pretty good drop those couple years. And it's come back up a little bit, but it's not even come close to where the numbers were at before that. The terminology they use for that is colony collapse disorder, because it was, for some unapparent reason or whatever, the bees just collapsed. They just died off, had a big die-off. It's been attributed to a number of things: pesticide, genetics of the bees, genetics of the crops out there because of what the bees are able to eat, not giving them quite the balanced diet they had before that, the number of chemicals being used, all that type of thing. So there's not the number of bees out there that there used to be, but it's gradually coming up a little bit at a time. Just, I think you said you're at Winchester Trail, that's what, Canal Winchester, if I remember right. So that's, you know, even on your part of Franklin County, there's a pretty good sized local bee club out there that's really doing a lot to bring bees back into the Franklin County, Central Ohio area. So that's helping out a lot in your area. Okay?
Fantastic. Okay, Ms. Mayer's class?
Are
Do you
there
have a question?
more farm hives than wild hives?
Probably in today's culture, there's more kept hives than there are wild ones, simply because of all the diseases and pests and whatnot that attack the kept bees, okay, or attacking the wild bees. So therefore, your wild bees have decreased over the years just as much, and there's not nearly there's no one out there replacing the wild bees. They're replacing their own bees in their own backyard and that type of thing. Those do swarm once in a while, which go out into the wild and repopulate the wild trees and things like that. But the wild bees are pretty well gone. I mean, I can't say they're gone, but the numbers have decreased a lot across the state in the last few years.
Great. North Elementary?
We had a question about why the hives are hexagonal and not circular inside the hives.
Why are the cells hexagon instead of circular?
Yes.
If you actually look at it by being hexagon shaped like that, six-sided like that, it takes more pressure to crush those than what it would even a circle. So that's actually, as far as nature is concerned, that's a stronger structure they can have for maintaining the integrity of the comb inside that hive.
Great question. Okay, let's go back to Ms. Adams' class.
Okay, Justice.
What is the bee wax made of?
What is beeswax made out? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes.
Beeswax is actually secreted by the bees themselves. Between the abdomen sections on the underside of the bee, between the abdomen section, you've got little glands up in there that will actually secrete these little flakes of wax. It's kind of sounds gross in a way, but think of earwax. You know, where does earwax come from? You know, but there's little inside the bee's body, up in between those abdomen sections, there's just little glands that secrete these little flakes of wax. Kind of look like snowflakes made out of wax.
Great. Ms. Mayer's class?
No, we don't have any questions.
You don't? Okay. Well, if you can think of another one, we'll come back. Okay, back to North Elementary.
Several students are curious about how many eggs a queen bee will lay in a day. I don't think he announced it this afternoon.
Okay.
A queen bee on a summer day, or actually any time from about April through October, she can lay 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day.
Boy, she must be a busy queen. That's a great question.
She's busy with you guys scrambling those eggs to find them. That's a lot of eggs.
Okay, Ms. Adams' class, was that Ms. Adams' class? So, Ms. Mayer, North Elementary. North Elementary?
That was our question about the eggs.
Okay.
Michelle,
Well,
I have a follow-up question to that. If there are that many eggs being laid, what is the life expectancy of a worker bee? Because that would mean that you would need to have more hives with that many bees being hatched.
That's right. And sometimes they do build up quite rapidly, especially in the spring of the year. They do build up quite rapidly. That causes a situation known as swarming. But the life expectancy of the worker honeybees actually in the summertime when they're flying so much is 6, maybe 7 weeks. because they just fly back and forth between flower and hive so much, they just wear themselves out. The wings give out, and they just die out there in flight someplace in crash.
Oh, okay.
Okay, another question. When a bee stings someone, does that bee survive?
When a honeybee stings someone, a worker honeybee stings someone, no, it does not survive. And that's one way you can actually tell if it's a honeybee that stung you. Let's say you got stung on the back of the hand and you want to know if it was a honeybee or if it was some other kind of stinging insect. The honeybee is the only bee that's going to leave a stinger stuck in you. And you can actually look at that stinger stuck in your hand. It'd be like a little ball pumping. It's a little muscular sac pumping venom down into your body. So a lot of people, first thing they do is slap it or squeeze it and try to pull it out. And all you're doing is shoving that venom right on down into you. So what you need to do is take your fingernail or something like that and try to scrape that stinger out so that you're going in underneath that bulb and popping it back up out so you're not shoving more venom down in you. You're actually extracting. Good.
Okay, well, why does the bee not survive?
Because when the bee stings you and it leaves its stinger, that poison sac stuck to you, it's actually leaving part of its body behind. So when it stings you and flies off and leaves part of its body behind, it basically dies from lack of that. I mean, it'd be like me grabbing somebody and pulling their arm off. Sooner or later, they're going to bleed to death. And a bee's going to do the same basic type of ideas. It leaves part of its body behind.
Wow. Wow. I always heard that. Now I know the right answer to that. Okay, Ms. Mayer's class, do you have any more questions?
No.
No? Okay, great. Okay, let's go back to North Elementary.
What? You just skipped us.
Keep skipping us.
No.
Oh, do I skip you, Ms. Adams? I'm so sorry. Let's go back to Ms. Adams' class first.
All right, Tanaya.
From the bees.
How much honey do you make from the bees?
That's going to vary from part of the state to part of the state you're in and what's blooming and that type of thing. You in the Central Ohio area, if I remember correctly, right, Adams? So out that direction, you're probably the 60, 70, maybe 80-pound honey per colony average in more in the Central Ohio area than what we are over this side of the state. So you make a little more out that way than what we do. So it varies.
Well, there are a lot more crops out there too, so maybe would that be a reason why?
Well, there's more crops out that way, a little bit different in moisture conditions, soil types. All that comes into play. Here in Eastern Ohio, we've got a lot of hills and that type of thing with the woods. So we get the tree honey. We don't get the the clovers and that type of thing that they do out in Central Ohio. Soybeans and that.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to Ms. Adams' class. We want them to get to catch up with their questions. Another question?
Kenny.
Oh. How many honeybees do you have?
How many honeybees do you have?
I'll let you do the math on that, okay? I've got about 25 hives of bees, and there's right now 40, 50,000 bees in a hive, so how many bees is that be?
25, 41, 45.
800,000.
800,000. About 800,000.
Wow.
That's a lot of
That's
bees.
a lot of bees.
Yep.
Okay, do we have another question for Ms. Adams' class, and then we will go to North Elementary.
Caitlin.
Oh, I forgot.
Speak up, Caitlin.
How do the bees know if they're supposed to collect the nectar? How do they know if they're supposed to?
How do they know if they're supposed to collect the nectar? It's basically inborn in a bee, I guess you could say. It's their nature. Their nature is to go out and collect something that the hive is going to survive on. Okay, the same as people would know that they have to go get a job and go to work to make money to survive on. The bees know that they have to make honey, collect pollen, that type of thing to survive on. So they just automatically know that they have to go out and collect that. And they usually do this. A worker bee's life is separated into stages depending on what age it is. Okay, the first few days after it's born, it stays inside the hive and does stuff. Then the next few days it gets to make little short trips out. Then it finally gets to go out into the field. Its last couple weeks of life, so to speak, to collect the nectar and collect pollen. So it's kind of a nature thing, and they just know that it's innate in them.
How long can a bee live?
A worker bee lives 6 to 7 weeks in the summertime. Those that are born late in the fall will live until the following spring, with any luck. Okay, sometimes they die off because of cold weather. Drones will just live maybe one summer, depending on whether they mate with the queen or if they just get tossed out of the hive. A queen bee will live usually about 2 years. She's got a productive life, something like that.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, North Elementary.
Okay, I know this morning you explained to us about swarms. So if you find a wild hive, do you have to destroy it? Or what do you do when you find a wild hive?
Some of that depends on where we find it at, okay? If we find it inside of a tree, quite often we leave it alone. If we find it in the wall of a building, sometimes we can take them out of the wall, sometimes we leave them there. If it's just hanging on a branch out there, a lot of times we can actually cut that branch off, or maybe just shake them into one of our normal beehives, and we can leave them sit there until they kind of quiet down. We'll pick them up then inside of our hive and take them back home with us, or take them to one of our locations. So we can take that wild hive, or wild swarm as you call it, and put it inside of a hive, and then it becomes domesticated, if you want to think of bees as being domesticated. I mean, we don't control them like we do a domesticated dog or cat or even cattle. You know, we can't keep bees a fenced area. The bees will fly out over 1.5 to 2 mile area in each direction. We can't control where they go. So. Okay.
Does the taste of that honey, is that different, wild honey, rather than domesticated honey?
No, it's all the same stuff. Bees are working the same kind of flowers, whether they're making that honey in a tree, a wall, or building inside one of our beehives. So it's all the same. You know, it's made from the same type of flowers and that type of thing. So the taste would be basically the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, another question from Ms. Adams' class.
Jordan.
Is royal jelly edible?
Royal jelly edible? Yeah, you can eat royal jelly. It just takes a lot to collect enough to get much of it to taste. Okay, they don't make a whole lot of it at a time. They just make it inside the queen cells when they want to raise a new queen. But you can find it for sale in some health food stores and places like that. But it's edible. There's nothing wrong with eating the royal jelly or the pollen or anything else like that comes out of the beehive.
Okay, North Elementary.
We had like a question about what do honeybees do in the winter?
In the wintertime, the honeybees get in a ball inside the hive, like around those frames, around the honey that's in that. The bees get in a ball. We call it a cluster. The bees on the outside of this cluster squeeze to get towards the center of that ball. As they squeeze to get towards the center, that knocks some of the inside ladies out to the outside, and they squeeze to get back in. So it's like kind of a constant rotation there. The queen ends up staying towards wherever the center of that is. But this compaction, is squeezing together the bees in a little rotation and you know, moving of the muscles to get a little tighter and tighter, actually creates heat. So on the outside of the ball, it could be 0 degrees, and on the inside where that queen's at, it's going to be right around 90 degrees. So there's quite a temperature difference just from compaction. So that's basically what they do, just squeeze together, huddle together, and then to make heat.
Do some of those bees on the outside of the ball die?
Some of them do die.
Because it's too cold?
It just gets too cold, and sometimes if you don't have a big enough cluster, maybe the hive's weak in the fall of the year for some reason, you don't have a big enough cluster, you will have some really long cold spells in the wintertime. They just can't squeeze tight enough together. There's not enough bees there to create the heat that's needed, and the cold finally gets through to them. But most of the time that, if they've got a good sized cluster and they've got enough honey to eat, they make it through okay. Most of it.
Great. Okay, we've got about enough time for 2 more questions from each class. Let's go back to Ms. Adams' class.
Do bees have predators?
Do bees have predators? Yes. There's a number of different animals out there that like to eat bees. Everything from skunks to different types of birds that fly in and eat them that way and stuff. So there's a number of different things that get inside the beehive. Skunks, mice get inside the beehives, all types of things like that. So it makes things interesting for them sometimes. And remember, there's Winnie the Pooh.
Great. Winnie the Pooh.
There you go.
That's true. Okay, North Elementary.
You mentioned that they can fly 1.5 to 2 miles, but how fast do they fly?
They can fly up to about 15 miles an hour. Can you run that fast?
Wow.
Can you?
I wish I could.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Ms. Adams' class.
Connor. What happens to the drone bees when they mate with the queen?
They mate with the queen on what we call flight. So they're flying around up in the air, maybe 40, 50 feet up in the air. They'll mate with the queen, and the drone will actually drop to the ground dead. So it dies in the process.
Okay. One last question then from North Elementary.
1 second.
Okay.
Would you want to ask it? No. You'll ask it, but it doesn't make sense. All right, Seth is going to ask a question.
This is from Goldstill, and it says, "Is the honey making? Is the honey making process out of the reproduction, or is just temporary?"
I didn't catch it. Honey making.
Is it from the reproduction? Do with the reproduction? I'm sorry. If the making of the honey has to do with the reproduction system in bees, or is it a completely separate system?
Completely separate system. What the bees do is the bees will actually go out and suck nectar out of the plants, okay, out of the flowers of plants. They suck the nectar out of the flowers into little, we call it a honey sac, okay. Once they bring that nectar back into the hive, then sounds kind of gross. Somebody will get grossed out here, but they basically spit this back up out of the honey sac and put it in the cells. Okay, so they'll put in whatever cell they want inside that hive. Then they start fanning it and dehydrate it down. So it's completely separate from what you're talking there. Okay.
Great. Well, I hate to tell you, but time is about up here. And time is up, and we need to wrap up our 3rd Google Hangout of the year. Farm Bureau has provided you with the wonderful bee egg mags, okay? Be sure that you take those and spend some time with that information. Go to the suggested activities on the back page that give you some activities and websites that you may want to visit. Be sure to take it home and read it and show your parents and your grandparents and your family, because it's really such a cool piece. Thank you to all of our teachers and students who participated today. Thanks to Jennifer Barnett and her work for scheduling the trial runs with the teachers and handling the tech side. Thank you to Anita Cook, the organization director, for assisting us today. And a special thanks also to Mr. Moffat's class, his production class, who helped produce this. But the best thanks of all goes out to Mr. John Grafton, our beekeeper, who joined us today. Can we give him a round of applause? Great. Thank you. Okay. Be sure to sign up for future Farmtastic Agventures. Water is March 13th. Soils and Trees are April 10th. and Pizza Pizzazz on May 8th. For more information, go to agventures.hangout@gmail.com. And remember, agriculture produces the house you live in, the chair you sit on, the clothes you wear, the food you eat, and the job where you work. See you next time and have a great day.